Would I never stop thinking about you? Found myself wishing you were there, just to be with me.
Oh, welcome back. It's right around 9:20 on this beautiful Tuesday, 7th day of March. Joining me right across the bar table. I don't know what to call this table. Is it a bar top? Is it a countertop? It's our daily show's top, because we are joined now by Jesse Allen in Edwardsville Unity. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So take us through this. So you have had a really strong career in a lot of this. Take us through what Edwardsville Unity is all about in a brief overview.
Absolutely. So the shortest answer is that we are a non-for-profit organization that promotes racial, religious, and cultural harmony. And we do that through education, collaboration, and community building.
Awesome. And how did you get started with developing this great idea?
Well, it's kind of it's a long story, but I'll do the long story short. Basically, it comes from the pandemic. So I was at a phase where early on, say June of 2020, something like that, I had some time on my hands, and online I was doing some research about different religions and those sorts of things. I've always been kind of a multi-faith or interfaith kind of person. But I happened to cross a connection with someone from the Baha'i community in Edwardsville. So are you familiar at all with the Baha'i faith?
I am not.
Okay, so it is one of the world's youngest religions.
Okay.
And there are a lot of really cool things about it. It's basically like an evolution. If you think about the trinity of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it's kind of like an extension of that. So, but basically the big ideas behind Baha'i are that all of the previous religions are valid, that all human beings are equal, and that it is part of God's plan for everybody that we evolve not only as individuals and biologically, but that human beings evolve spiritually. And so it is assumed in eventuality in the Baha'i faith that the human species is getting better. And no matter what anybody thinks, and times were so divided and things are so terrible.
Right.
There was somebody 150 years ago who was already like, yeah, things are bad now, but they're going to get better.
Right. And that's true. Actually, that's very fascinating, because I have not heard much about it. So was this new to you whenever you connected?
I would say not new to me. Actually, I'll take you back. So I lived on the campus of SIU Edwardsville when I was a young person. And the only real church that I remember going to actually was in Alton, and it was a Baha'i church. Yes.
Wow.
So my parents were hippies, and they were all about, free love. And I think I was spending the night at somebody's house. And they were like, well, can we take him to church? And so I went. Probably the first church that I remember attending was a Baha'i.
Wow. And now I got to ask you, and if it's okay for me to, were your parents abrasive to that, or did they kind of like you going and experiencing that?
No, completely open. So when I lived on the campus of SIU, I was exposed to people from all over the world. So I had friends. Well, my best friend growing up, his parents were Jamaican. But I knew people from Pakistan and Mexico, and that's kind of one of the great things about a college community is that you're exposed to lots of diversity.
Yeah.
And my parents had no particular faith. My dad was raised Catholic and had a very severe reaction to it.
Oh, okay.
And so I was raised just to go out into the world and find your thing.
Really cool.
And so that was part of the plan.
Right on.
But anyway, back to the story.
Don't let me cut you off. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I got hooked up with a guy by the name of Jamal McLaughlin, and he introduced me to some of the other Baha'is. And because Jamal and I both had a shared history of putting on shows and doing concerts, we had this idea that we should maybe use some of our talents to the good of the community. And it just so happened that there is a group out of Belleville called the Center for Racial Harmony, and every year they do something called a Peace Festival. And so I attended that Peace Festival at Jamal's suggestion, and immediately occurred to me that we needed to bring this to our neck of the woods, at least Madison County, if not Edwardsville. And so as we started to kind of get the motivation to put on a show, basically, a Unity show, that is really honestly the evolution of Edwardsville Unity as a non-for-profit as it exists now. So Edwardsville Unity as an organization has been around since 2017, and it's kind of like the secular arm of the Baha'i faith. So if you think about it, there are certain activities or things that communities do where they really don't want to have churches involved. And so a lot of times churches will have like this non-religious aspect of themselves where they can do their community work and that sorts of things. So Edwardsville Unity actually started as the secular arm of the Edwardsville Baha'i. And even though I am not a Baha'i, I was 100% behind their mission. And so I would say in about 2020, we got this idea that, hey, maybe if we give ourselves 18 months, we can put on a hell of a show.
Right. And is it going to be a hell of a show?
Well, so we had our first one in 2020.
Okay.
And so Edwardsville or Unity Fest is going to be one of those events that's hopefully an annual thing. And the idea behind it is to get as many different voices and faces into one place as humanly possible. So we have interfaith prayers, diverse and powerful speakers, and then also diverse performers. A perfect example would be the Sunshine Lee Drum. I can't remember the name of the actual organization, but it's basically it's a drum circle that does African drumming, and they're out of East St. Louis, and so they were one of our performers. We had El Grupo Panamania Folklorico, which was Panamanian dancers out of St. Louis.
Wow.
And so then we had some local African-American churches that had performers and different speakers, like from SIU, the Center for Spirituality and Sustainability. So it's kind of like this conglomeration of interfaith, intercultural, but then also interrace performers.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic because it gives everyone the opportunity to kind of get that experience and get to meet some of the different cultures and the different, things that are right here in the Metro East. And sometimes, Jesse, I think people don't realize that there's a gauntlet, a melting pot of our own right here in this community,
That's absolutely right. And having, worked in Alton, I know that Alton is a fantastic example of that. And one of the things that I've noticed in doing this work is as we reach out to groups like the NAACP or the Latino Roundtable, is that there are all these organizations that are doing really amazing things.
True.
But they also have a tendency to kind of stay on their own island.
It's true.
And so one of the things that we've been trying to do with Edwardsville Unity is kind of bridge that gap or build that bridge in between those organizations and get them together. And then also let them intermingle with, good old-fashioned European American white churches, which, in Edwardsville, we have lots of that. But to really kind of to stir that melting pot, as it were.
Well, and that, like I said, I really like the concept of this. I think it's fantastic that, you guys are bringing in all walks of life, all facets of religious beliefs, of cultural, just philosophies. And the fact that you guys are going to have this on September 30th is really a great thing. And that's the reason it's time to prepare, because this is a big deal. I mean, this is a big dude of an event,
Absolutely, absolutely. So last year we had about 600 people in attendance.
Wow, good for you guys.
And so, our goal is probably about 1,000 people over the course of a 5-hour program. The one thing that I will say as a pitch for the event, though, is it's completely free. So the two rules of the event are absolutely no money changes hands at all of any kind, and there is no politics. Because
I love that.
Right. So there are not two more divisive things on this planet than money and politics.
Yeah.
And so what we do as an organization is we try to raise the money. So the food is completely free. We pay for all the entertainment, all the things. Our vendors are not really vendors in a sense that they're selling things, but oftentimes they give away things, or there's the free activities. We have kids activities and those sorts of things. And so it's a completely free event, and anybody who shows up is welcome. Free food and entertainment for 5 hours.
Okay. Normally when someone says free, they put in the small print free admission. This is completely free. That's fantastic. You're really giving us an incentive to go and experience all of these different cultures and all these different things that are going to be happening on the 30th. I really like that. And is that so? With all of that, is there a way that maybe people can reach out to you or the group as a whole and get more information? I don't know if you guys do any meetings or monthly things. I just want to make sure that we get that out.
Actually, our next meeting is going to be this Thursday.
Okay.
We hold it at the Edwardsville Public Library. It's usually from about 6 to 8 o'clock. We meet bi-weekly in an effort to not only get ongoing programming together, but then also to start the planning process. I am the president actually of Edwardsville Unity. I've got about half the program figured out now. But we're constantly in this phase of looking out for new performers and new talent, different organizations that might, want to be involved. The idea behind me coming here was just to try to grow this thing.
That's for you guys. I better see a lot of your faces out there on the 30th of September. You guys haven't let me down yet. They're a great audience. And, the fact that, they show this show so much support and go and buy tickets to different events. I mean, I think we're all ready for what's coming our way on the 30th. And I got to ask you of September, and I got to ask you, Jesse, have you been getting a lot of good feedback, a lot of good working relationships established and developed because of this great event and just great organization as a whole?
Well, and I would say, when I start thinking about our partners, so we partner with Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Hub. Her name is, the woman that runs that her name is Lindy Wagner, but then also Lewis and Clark Community College, their diversity and educational excellence coordinator, her name is Maya Lawrence. And so those partnerships have just been invaluable. And we try to reach out to, young people in an effort. Just the college campuses, again, are such a great place for people with all these differences to come together and just learn and enjoy each other's company. Well,
and too, I mean, I think, with this, and, this, I think, just like I do, sometimes whenever, somebody that's talking about all these different faiths, sometimes people go, well, are you teaching them anything? Not really, because what I'm gathering out of all of this is just the acceptance of everyone, the acceptance of beliefs of where I think it's really an insightful thing. And I got to ask you, since your experience with the Baha'i faith and what you're doing now, I mean, how has that helped you in your life?
Well, so on a regular basis, the Baha'i Faith does an event at the Center for Spirituality and Sustainability on SIU. It's the Fuller Dome, but they do an event called Soul Sunday.
Okay.
And so it is an interfaith, I can't say church service, although technically the Dome is a church, but it's an interfaith service.
Okay.
And just yesterday, we had about 20 people, and they represent all different kinds of faiths. So there were people there that were representing Baha'i, there were agnostics, but they do all kinds of interfaith readings. So you might hear a quote from the Bhagavad Gita and the Hindu faith, or a quote from Buddha or Mahatma Gandhi, or from the Bible, right? So there are a lot of the participants who, are European American Christians. And so we just encourage all of that. I will tell you just personally, of all of the world's faiths, Christianity is probably the one that I am ignorant of the most. So because my parents were hippies, I was raised kind of on that more like the Taoist, yogic philosophy, the Buddhist philosophy. Yeah. And so I, having a Christian wife and raising Christian kids, have kind of come to learn that, but I wasn't necessarily exposed to that as a kid. Yeah. And so we just embrace all of that as, kind of this idea that even though, we do it in different ways, we're all after the same thing.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. I really mean that. And for more information, I'm on your website, Edwardsvilleunity.com. Is your newsletter still going?
I am not the one who's responsible for that. That's probably Jamal. I don't do a lot of the tech stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'm more of like the face-to-face guy.
I put people on the spot all the time. I should have asked you.
I know there are some things that I rely on everybody to do, but we're a group that's about 15 people strong as far as like actual membership and on a regular basis. But everybody's got kind of their own talents and their own things. I do a lot of the outreach and attend a lot of the different group meetings, but my guy Jamal, we just have had a really priceless partnership because he handles the website and all the Facebook and social media and all that stuff.
Well, we appreciate all the work because that's not easy. That's some of the hardest stuff to do. But
absolutely,
what you're doing, and I think it's so fascinating, is, and you and I could talk about your career in different facets, for hours on length, but definitely just want to get this information out first of this Unity Fest, which is, like you guys can see on the lower third, the 30th of September from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and a lot of really cool stuff coming our way. But I got to ask you, in terms of, speaking with younger people about Edwardsville Unity, what are some of the thoughts? What are some of the reactions that you're receiving from the younger generations?
Well, so there are a lot of people who have been force-fed media their entire lives. And actually, that's true even of us.
Yeah,
it's just we didn't have it in our face 24/7. Yep. And I just think this idea that, the nation is divided, that we're all different, that whether you live in a red state or a blue state or whatever, the thing that is missing is that we're all American. And to take it even bigger, that we're all part of, this human race.
Yeah.
And so I am concerned that young people are buying into that. And I know that for a lot of the young people that I deal with professionally, are so despondent and are really lacking that hope. And so that's why I try to bring that message to them that, this thing isn't over. you know, and it ebbs and it flows, and we're just kind of riding those waves. And it just so happens that there were some things that happened politically that made it so that we hit some choppy water.
Yeah.
But because we know that, you know, in America, if you look at history at all, it's this pendulum that swings back and forth, that it's going to swing the other way. And it only takes a handful of us, especially those young people who are our future. And there are a lot of young people who are emboldened. So like when I go out and I look for speakers, I'm looking for people who are, you know, in that 20 to 30 range, where they've had enough experience to speak intelligently on a subject,
right?
But then also they can have some more connection with the young people because they have the Instagram account, and they
It's true.
and they are on TikTok, and they, you know, they can hit these young people where they're accessible. But a lot of our performers, a lot of our speakers are kind of in that younger age. You know, they're not all old, you know, bald dudes like me. But what I love doing is I love connecting with those young people because we find those bright spots.
Right.
You know, the leaders of tomorrow are on the streets today.
It's true. That's a good point.
And one of the reasons why, you know, we do these outreach events and those sorts of things is we want to, you know, if we could just pick up one person who, you know, called me and said, "Hey, Jesse, I saw the show and I want to know what I can do."
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that I will put them to work immediately.
Well, and too, Jesse, I've said this before, somebody that was 17 when I owned my first business and everything else, you know, I see so many times, you know, younger people go, "Well, no one's listening to us. No one's listening." And that is true to an extent. But it's also good to have guidance from that, not, I hate saying older, but the older generation to
Bro,
say,
I'm 50.
Right, you know, but, you know, just to say, you know, maybe it's a great idea, but let's explore different avenues to make sure this idea works. Because I think there's a disconnect, and especially you would know this in your work, that your older people don't listen to us, or there's, you know, we're out here for ourselves. And for a lot of us, like me, it kind of was that way. You're doing it on your own, and you had some people help you out along the way, maybe a few good press days, but it's having that connecting piece. Someone like yourself, Jesse, that goes, yeah, let's bring you on. Let's help build you up, but also let's connect you, and let's see if this idea could work for you. And no matter what it is, if it's business, spiritually, you know, philosophically, who knows? But we need people like you, that's for sure.
Well, there is just a ton of amazing energy out there, right?
Yeah,
and
true.
And during the pandemic, and I hate to keep going back to that, but during that, it all kind of got boxed up. And one of the things that I saw that happened is that there were a lot of people that were finding new ways to channel that, right? So there were people who maybe weren't spiritual before, but all of a sudden now have time on their hands. So they're doing yoga, or they're doing some reading, or they're whatever. And so basically what we want to do is we want to provide an outlet and an opportunity to listen to those people and hear them also, so that they can feel empowered to keep this thing going.
Absolutely. And if you guys are just joining us, we have been talking to Edwardsville Unity Jesse with us. And real quick, just because I told you 15 minutes, we kind of been talking 20. I do this to everybody.
Well,
I just say, you know.
Yeah, we talk.
Yeah, that's right. Give us an overview, if you could, and summarize the event, because we're going to be talking about this, I think, a little bit long and more in depth leading up to the event, but it's coming our way. So mark your calendars, because this is a really cool event. Jesse, the floor is yours, Senator. Take it away.
So on September 30th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., Edwardsville Unity is going to hold a completely free event called Unity Fest. And the idea is to bring as many different voices and faces into one place as humanly possible in an effort to change the national narrative that we can't get along.
It's true.
The idea behind the organization is we are trying to promote racial, religious, and cultural harmony, and we need people, right? So please come out, free food, free entertainment. We'd love to see you.
Absolutely. And one last time, what's the best way for people to follow along? Is it the social medias or the website, you think?
I would say that you can look up Edwardsville Unity on Facebook, or also Edwardsvilleunity.com. And honestly, I'm not afraid to give out my phone number.
Go for it, yeah.
So if you if you or someone you know is interested in the idea of promoting racial, religious, and cultural harmony, please give me a call. My name is Jesse Allen. My phone number is 618-960-3431, and I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for taking some time out with us today and really talking about this event. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I definitely think you're going to hit your 1,000 turnout goal, and I think it might be a little bit larger than that, because you guys are doing great work.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
No problem. We'll take a quick break. Our daily show, it rolls on right after this in the heart of the Riverbend.